I want to begin by introducing the candidates to you. Senator Patty Murray is the incumbent Democrat seeking her 4th term. She is challenged in this race by Republican Dino Rossi. We welcome you both. And for this debate, the candidates will answer questions submitted by viewers. They'll also face a panel of Washington journalists, who I'll introduce to you now. From the Spokesman Review, Capitol Bureau Chief Jim Camden. From the Tri-City Herald, political reporter Michelle Dupler. And from KXLY, news anchor Nadine Woodward. We're joined tonight by a studio audience. Thanks to all of you for coming. And we want to get to as many questions as we can in the next hour. So the audience has agreed to hold applause until the end of the debate. With that, let's get started. The candidates have 1 minute for opening statements. A coin flip before the debate determined that Mr. Rossi will go first.
America's in trouble. That's why I'm running for the U.S. Senate. If we don't have a course correction in this election, I think we're going to wake up 24 months from now in a country we don't even recognize. We have uncontrolled spending and government-controlled health care. We are moving down a path that's very dangerous. And so the problem with Washington, D.C., though, I think many people believe is that they just can't admit when they're wrong, and they can't change course. And unfortunately, I think that's what we're seeing here. And so we're going to have a spirited debate tonight, and a spirited debate between 2 candidates. I have a lot of respect for Senator Murray. This is not personal. What this is about is I believe that she's heading in the wrong direction. I think the extreme partisanship in Washington, D.C. is really taking its course and taking us down the wrong path. And so I just want to say thank you to KXLY and also KSPS for putting on this debate. And I want to say thank you to Senator Murray for joining me here today. I hope to air all the issues out here tonight. Thank you.
Senator Murray.
Well, thank you to our hosts and to all of you for joining us this evening for a very important discussion about who is going to be your voice and your advocate in the United States Senate. So many families are struggling today, not through anything they did, but because of the mistakes and greed on Wall Street. This state is my family. My family's hurting, and that's why I'm working so hard to work with your community leaders to get you jobs and get this country back on track again. And I will take on even the most powerful to make sure that you have a voice at the table when these decisions are made. I grew up in Bothell, Washington, small town, big family. My dad ran a store on Main Street. I learned those Main Street values of hard work and fighting for what you believe in. Those are the values I take back to be your voice in the United States Senate. And I believe that by working together, we can solve the problems that come in front of us if we have the courage and take the responsibility.
Our first question comes from Jim Camden, and Mr. Rossi, you will answer first. There'll be 1:30 for your answer.
The war in Afghanistan is becoming one of the longest wars this country has ever waged, and the casualty count is rising as the surge strategy is employed there, similar to what was used in Iraq. Senator Murray supports a timetable to withdraw from Afghanistan. Mr. Rossi, you don't. But I'm wondering if you two could both tell us, how long should we be willing to stay in Afghanistan, and under what conditions should we be willing to leave?
Well, first off, I want to say thank you to the military families, especially in our state, and the men and women that are serving in uniform right now. And let's take a step back and look at, pre-9/11, what happened in Afghanistan. You had terrorist training camps. You had people there that hate Americans. They want to kill you, your children, your grandchildren. We can't let that happen again. We can't let them come back into power. And we've had, you see what's happened with the surge. What a lot of people don't know, it's taken 6 months for the 30,000 troops to show up, and they've only been there for a couple of months. And I believe at full force. I also agree with President Obama with this choice of General Petraeus. Let's see how this works. I do not agree with having a date certain as to when we are going to withdraw our troops. I think what they'll do is just go hide up in the caves and wait till we leave and come back down. And quite frankly, we could end up with more terrorist camps training people who want to kill us. We can't allow that to happen. And so we have to give our military every tool possible so they can achieve their objective and come home as soon as possible. But I want to give General Petraeus a chance to move forward and make this work.
Senator Murray.
Well, I will not forget September 11th. I was in the nation's capital, happened to be looking out the window and saw the smoke rising from the Pentagon. And I was very proud of us because even though it was a very divisive time, we came together, Republicans and Democrats, and voted together to go to war on terrorists wherever they exist. We have a number of military families now who've sacrificed so much for our nation. They've gone to Iraq and Afghanistan now 3, 4, and even 5 times. And we owe it to them to know where and how long they're going to be there and how much more sacrifice they have to give. We've been in Afghanistan for 9 years now, to the tunes of billions of dollars. I am one of a few senators who voted to tell this president that he does need to tell the American people how we can show that we are winning a war on terrorists wherever they exist. I don't believe that we have a willing partner in President Karzai right now that we can count on. So at this time in our nation's history, when we are struggling with our economy and our precious resources, I think we owe it to the men and women who've been fighting for us and to all of us as Americans to ask those tough questions about whether or not a war on terrorists wherever they exist and making sure that we take care of our military in a very tough economic time, having boots on the ground in Afghanistan is the right policy. I'm asking those decisions because it is the right questions to ask.
Well, Mr. Rossi, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
We just read in the Wall Street Journal yesterday that President Karzai was meeting with the Afghani Taliban, and they were actually meeting to discuss some sort of reconciliation. I'm not sure how that's going to work. It's you know, you can be cautiously optimistic. When Karzai actually fired his interior minister, people were very concerned about that. They put a new interior minister in who actually brought in 27 new police chiefs, which they're making progress with. We have to have progress on the ground if we expect to have any lasting effort in Afghanistan.
And Senator Murray, you have 30 seconds to rebut.
Well, one important question that wasn't answered is how we're going to pay for this. One of the reasons our country is in trouble today is because we went to 2 wars without paying for it. Mr. Rossi supports extending tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans to the tune of $1 trillion. I say to him, how do you tell our troops, the men and women who have fought so hard for us and come home with mental and physical wounds of war, that we are going to pay and be responsible for the decisions we make? We have to fight a war on terrorists wherever they exist. But if we agree to do that, we have to say how we're going to pay for it.
Our next question is from a viewer. Here's what he had on his mind for the candidates.
My name is Robert. I'm from Spokane, Washington. And my question to the candidates is this: what will you do to create more jobs for Washington State? Thank you.
Senator Murray, that question is to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. It is a very important one. It's one that I talk about all the time because so many families today are hurting in our state because they've lost their jobs and their homes and their mortgages. And we need to make sure that they do get back on the job. I come home every weekend and I talk to community leaders all over the state about what the needs are in their communities. And then I go back to Washington, D.C. and fight for those investments so that we can get people back on the job. Here in Spokane, I came and talked to your community leaders about the university district and creating the River Point campus there so that we can start creating jobs in healthcare, a very important economic sector here in Spokane. Then I went back to Washington, D.C. and got an investment to help them get that off the ground, and we've got students there now studying and getting a job in healthcare industry. Mr. Rossi says he isn't going to fight for those targeted investments. I say it's my job to fight for investments to help you and your community and get you back to work again. It's why I went and talked to so many Main Street businesses who told me that they couldn't get the capital they needed to keep their doors open or to put goods on their shelves or to hire new employees. We passed the Main Street lending bill. The president has signed it into law so that we can now have capital flowing to those businesses so they can keep their doors open and you at work. Mr. Rossi says he doesn't support that. My job is to make sure that your job is secure.
All right, Mr. Rossi, a minute 30.
We have a functional unemployment rate in the state of Washington of 17.4%. You're talking about almost 2 out of every 10 people you know really aren't feeding their families and keeping a roof over their head. We're having some serious problems. I've been traveling the state talking to a lot of small business owners. I'm a small businessman myself. I'm on the Dean's Advisory Board for the School of Business of the State of Washington. I actually know what we need to do to create jobs. But as I'm talking to these people in the business community, whether they have 2 people in a gift shop or a couple hundred people in a manufacturing facility, they say they're not going to expand their businesses. Why? Well, because they don't know what their government's going to do to them next week. They don't know what health care is going to cost. They don't know about the 2001-2003 tax cuts that should have been reauthorized, but Senator Murray voted to adjourn before that happened and created nothing but uncertainty. This uncertainty is leaving them in limbo, so they aren't going to expand their businesses. Since Senator Murray decided to adjourn before reauthorizing 2001-2003 tax cuts, we're going to have the biggest tax increase in American history. And so these business owners can be deciding who they're going to have to lay off to do this. Senator Murray's answer to jobs was more spending, borrowing money from the Chinese and Saudis and others. The stimulus failed. They said the unemployment rate wasn't going to go above 8%. Clearly, that didn't happen. And so now we have a very large deficit. It didn't work. Federal government can create temporary government jobs. We need entrepreneurs to create jobs.
Senator Murray, 30 seconds.
Well, I didn't hear any jobs created in that answer. Again, I work with your local community leaders to ask them where the jobs are going to be in your community and work with them to get the investments so that we can get those jobs in your back at work. I work to make sure that our Main Street businesses, like my dad's business when I was growing up, have the credit they need to be able to expand. It is why I fought so hard to make sure that those tankers have a contract that is made by American workers at Boeing, and that we base those tankers right here at Fairchild, which creates many civilian jobs. This is one of my priorities and one I keep working on.
Mr. Rossi?
For small business owners to create jobs, what they need is stability and certainty so they can invest in their business. Right now, they don't have any certainty. They need modest taxation, fair and predictable regulation, let them go chase the American dream. And when they're successful, you don't punish them for their success like Senator Murray wants to do with high tax rates, because you want them to do it again and again and again and again. Her government solution has failed. It's clear it's failed. As we travel all over the state, people know it's failed, but she wants to do more of it. I don't think we can afford that.
All right, Mr. Rossi. Now to Michelle Dupler, and Mr. Rossi, you will answer this question first.
Okay. If you were to vote to increase spending for nuclear waste cleanup at Hanford, as the Washington State Department of Ecology has suggested may be necessary to meet targets in a 5-year plan, would you cut other parts of the federal budget to avoid increasing overall federal spending? And if so, what would you cut?